Fairly brief but introduction to Microsoft apps that come with your Microsoft 365 subscription. And just for our agenda today, we're going to chat a little bit about the Microsoft 365/Teams universe, or multiverse, sometimes as I like to call it. And specifically, we're going to be focusing on the applications called Lists, Forms, and Planner and Tasks, or sometimes it's called Tasks by Planner, and sometimes it's just called Planner. Microsoft typical mode, they keep changing the name on things. If there is a question that comes up while we're going through these, don't hesitate to raise your hand, as Henry said, and we'll stop and see if we'll take that. But these are three just real basic productivity apps that do a lot of small things for us that help automate our lives. So 365, I think everybody here probably has 365, but just as for reference, so Microsoft 365 is a subscription service with bundled web applications, and we are officially calling it Microsoft 365 now. It used to be called Office 365. There are many different versions of 365 bundles that can be licensed, that come with different versions of or combinations of these apps. Microsoft Exchange Online, SharePoint, and Teams are included in almost every bundle. Most of you probably use the big three applications on a daily basis. But there are a lot of other applications that deserve some attention and or may be able to help you out with some of the tasks that you do or need to do, collaborate on a regular basis. So these are the productivity apps, lightweight business applications for lists, forms, keeping track of tasks, note-taking, booking appointments, automating processes. They are not perfect. Like all Microsoft software, they don't solve everything that you might be looking to do, but probably they'll hit a lot of needs. And so two things. One is that they're highly customizable out of the box. They are no-code applications. Also, they're free. They are included probably with your Microsoft 365 subscription, and they also integrate already with your Microsoft 365 user directory. So if you want to assign something or share something or chat with somebody about something here, there's no separate login. They're just notified. You have a chat, you move on, and it's no big deal. And these are extendable through custom coding. So it is possible to add custom code and or forms and or functionality to these, either with an application that Microsoft has called Power Automate, that is its own app, and or custom coding just down there in Java or JSON is absolutely possible for almost all of these applications. So these apps can be launched from most anywhere. They're part of the 365 family. So you can launch these when you log into 365. They can be added into Teams. They can be launched from SharePoint. You can put shortcuts to lists and Planner directly into your browser. And many of these applications also now have desktop or mobile application versions. So you can just load up lists or load up Planner directly as an application on your desktop. So this really gives you a lot of different ways to get into these applications and use them. Now, for today's purpose, our focus is going to be on accessing them from Microsoft Teams. And many of you probably are already into Teams. This is not meant as a Teams walkthrough, skipping over the basic functions of Teams, but just as an overview, Teams was Microsoft's answer to Slack. Slack was eating Microsoft's lunch in terms of collaboration. Over the previous tools that Microsoft had, they rolled out Teams. I should know this, but I think it was around 2016, maybe 2017. It was initially, like a lot of Microsoft software, a little bit weak, but it has come a long way in the intervening years. But in the basics, you have the ability to do group communications. You can chat one-on-one or in small ad hoc groups. You have group calendaring. You have online meetings and video. You have the ability to share files. You can edit files within Teams. You can open them directly up into Excel or Word or PowerPoint. And there are hundreds, if not thousands, of add-in applications that can connect to Teams and then be integrated within the Teams environment. So Teams is meant by Microsoft to be that front-end hub. easily accessible. People can organize it the way that they want to. And it's about acting as that window to get into applications while also collaborating with other folks. So know that, and that the graphic on this is a little bit weird, but I apologize for that. I didn't have a chance to fix that. But know that SharePoint is at the core of most everything that Teams does. Teams is sort of the front end window to stuff that's actually in SharePoint or maybe has been in SharePoint for a while. So lists, which we're going to talk about, technically is a SharePoint application, but it works fabulously, and I actually think it works better in Teams. I like the user interface better. It's friendlier. And a lot of these applications all have their actual data in SharePoint, SharePoint being the back-end database engine of Microsoft 365. So that's why they're able to share data and to work so seamlessly together. And it's really quite flexible. And I do tip my hat to Microsoft for pulling this together. So when one is looking at a team screen, and this is a team screen here, but we're seeing an app within Teams. And so when you have an app that's been added to Teams, it's seamless. It's just right there. And all I needed to do to add planner and tasks to a Teams group or to a Teams channel is all I had to do was hit the plus key. And when you add an app to a team, then whatever you do in that app by default is limited to and available to only the other people that are already in the team that you've created. So security is just handled for you naturally and dynamically. So if you've created an HR team, you've decided who has the rights to be in HR. Any app that you add to HR is only visible to those people. So there's just a whole security concern that you don't have to worry about so much. It's also possible to add some apps directly to the sidebar, so they're always available on a click. And it's also possible to pop out apps into different windows and or favorites, so that if you're doing something in Teams and you just want your stuff in a slightly different window or in a second window, so you can then move to someplace else within Teams, that's also possible, because that can sometimes feel limiting when you have to bounce around inside Teams to get to different screens. So there's a pop-out feature that's a Teams feature. It's not an app feature, it's a Teams feature that I'll show you that I hope you will enjoy. I enjoyed it when I finally figured out what it was. So we're going to start with lists. So lists is a simple database application. Anytime that you might have gone into Excel and created a list of things and just put headings across the top, you might, next time you have that come up, you might think about doing that in lists rather than Excel. You can also import existing Excel lists into the lists application. You can customize the fields, lots of different field types, more field types than you technically have in Excel, and that's easier to deal with. You can have single tables, or they can be connected, so you can do table relations on a simplistic level. You could sort, filter, select, and export. It's available to your other team members, and we can do other functions and automation through scripting. So people might use lists for the steps involved in employee onboarding. They might use it for issue tracking. They might use a list for fixed assets or recruitments or travel requests. Anything where you have a list of items that you want to keep track of, update, and share with other people in a simple database application, lists is not a bad way to go and should be looked at. So I think my next slide says that we're going to jump into a demo of lists. Yes, we are. Okay, so I'm going to minimize this. So here I am in Teams, and this is not a very busy site, just a fictional company called Contu Development. And I said that you can add lists or apps to any Teams channel. So this is a team here, Contu Development. There are 3 channels, which are basically topic areas, just as an organization of work, general PTO requests and webinar. It doesn't have to be that way. You can call them anything you want. So if I wanted to add a list to my general space, I would just click the plus, and then I am going to get a list of apps to add. Now, the Microsoft ones or ones that have been used recently, yeah, of course, they're going to be at the top, but almost anybody that has an application that is used in business has created an app to connect their program to Teams. I'm a third of the way down the page and I'm only up to the G. So I could just keep scrolling for a long time. Some of these may be applications that you've heard of. Some of them may be ones that you don't know. The apps themselves are free. Whether or not you have a license to use the program that it talks to, that's potentially a separate issue, and we won't get into that. But in this particular case, I'm going to add lists. Now, I know that it's sitting right there, but I'm just going to type in list. And I'm going to say, yeah, I want to add lists. It's added the app to the channel. And now the next thing it's going to ask me is, am I making a new list, or am I adding an existing list that I maybe have created previously? Because you can have the same list appear in more than one place if you want to. But in this particular case, I'm going to create a new list. And one of the first things it does is says, okay, start from scratch, bring something in from Excel, or maybe copy an existing list and modify it. That's fine. Plus, I have these templates here that if I wanted to, I can click and I can say, okay, so what does an event itinerary list look like? Well, this is what it would look like if I actually used this list. Or asset manager, here's some sample data so I can see what the asset manager list looks like. All right, so I'm just going to hit back, and I don't need to add another list here, because I actually, and just for reference, if you add an app and you change your mind, you just hit remove and it goes away. Now, so I've already created a list. I've got one here for us called company event. So this is a list, and this is a lot like working in Excel. So I have sort options, A to Z. I can filter any of these fields by anything that I want. I can move fields around. If I decide I want this field here, then I just click it and I drag it. And you have all kinds of different fields. I can add a new field or column, I should be saying more correctly, at any time. I can click add column. And these are the choices of the different kinds of column types. So it could be a physical location, number, yes, no answers. A person is somebody, within your actual organization. It could be an email address, or you could just type in their name and fill it in. Name and dates, multiple choices, links, currency. Look up into other lists is possible, and I can show or hide. So if, for example, I wanted to add I'm going to add a choice list to say required items, or I'm going to call this items required. And I'm going to say, does this need a computer? Could need a projector. The session could require music. And maybe it needs an assistant. Right? I can add as many of those as I want. I can change the color of them. I hit save. And now that is now on my list, hiding behind this box. Items required, and I can just bring that right out here as an important column. To edit anything, I just click on the item. So this is now the form. So I can change this, breakfast and greeting, should have been that. Session type, this is a choice. On the items required, oops, go away. Sometimes it does this. That's a meal, thank you very much. Items required showed up down here. And if I set it as a single select, then only one will be there. But you know what? That actually should be a multi-select. I can make that a multi-select. I'm not going to go back and do that right now. Where you have name fields, you can just type the name of the person in your organization, and they will just show up and go there. Also, within items on a list, and this is something you don't get from Excel, I can add comments to this. And then that comment gets notified that comment was just made. Dakota can reply to that comment at any time. And then there's a running dialogue that happens next to this item. So we could do lots of planning around that. And we also have the ability to add attachments to this. So pretty cool. Another great feature about lists is if I don't want to edit these fields one at a time, I can edit in grid mode. And if I decide that all sessions are going to require a projector, I can just copy and paste that. And I could do that copy and pasting for entire rows. I can also take a series of rows and columns. Let's say I had a list in Excel, I could select a range in Excel and paste it and create multiple records at one time just within this list. You do have the option, if you need to export the list to Excel, either to CSV or directly to Excel. It goes there directly. And I also have the option of opening this in SharePoint. And this is something that is by no means required. So as I said before, SharePoint is the back-end database, and SharePoint itself does have its own lists application. So I am right now in a web browser. I'm no longer in Teams. I'm in a web browser in SharePoint, and it's taking me to where the Contu development site is and this list application in SharePoint. And I could edit and I could browse and I could export here. But what I want to show you specifically, something that is only done in SharePoint, is the list settings. This gives me direct control to some advanced features such as permissions. So if for some reason I wanted to make this list visible to guests on my team site or to other members of the company, I only wanted them to have view options, but no edit option. I would allow permissions there. I can do validation settings to ensure that things fall within certain date ranges. And I can create and pre-create views here if I want to. So just know that some of the advanced features you need to get back into SharePoint in, but that's where, but for most folks, they quite honestly never have to get there. And the other thing I'll point out about lists is that you do have the ability to just filter, again, from any field. And when you get something looking the way that you want to, you can save a current view so you can easily recall it with certain filter settings, certain sorts, whatever it is that you like. You also have the option to view the list in different modes. So there's a wide mode, there's a compact mode, and there's also a gallery mode, which makes it real easy to visualize information, and you can control what fields appear on that list. So that's lists. It's a pretty compelling, simple application to use. And the best thing is it's not sitting in an Excel spreadsheet, it's sitting directly in your Teams. Someone goes into the general, they can go straight to the company agenda and see where we are in terms of the organization and or the things that are on this list. So that covers what I wanted to cover under lists. Does anybody have any particular questions on that? Or if not, we'll move forward to forms. I'm not seeing any hands up. All right. So forms. Forms is a data collection app. You could use it for surveys, quizzes, polls. People can respond and fill out forms inside of Teams via a web browser or mobile device. They can be private, internal to your company, or you can make them public to the world if you want to. You can embed them in your website if you want to, and the data will then flow into Teams. You get real-time results if they're submitted. You can be automatically notified based on someone submitting a form or submitting a form with a particular value selected. There's analytics built into it. You can export the results to Excel and do something, manipulate that data, do something further with it. And you can connect forms data to lists. So people use forms to plan events, to gather when folks are available and what kind of things that they want to see, PTO requests, user satisfaction, incident reports, maintenance requests, anything that you have where someone would fill out something and submit where you want fill in the following questions, you can do a form within Microsoft Forms app within Teams. So I'm going to pop back into my Teams app again. And so I created a channel here called PTO requests. And I previously had created a PTO form and I just added it right there. And so this is a Teams form. And so I'm just going to say, my name is Pat Nims. I'm a full-time employee. I'm in human resources. I'm the president. Actually, so let's fix this. This should really say it. I'm in the executive department. I am looking for a work from home leave. And I'm planning on working from home from November 7th through January 1st. What the hell? Let's go for it. I could upload files if I wanted to, and I can submit that form. and it tells me that I've done that. Now, within my sample system here, so I'm done with this, and I could do another one if I wanted to. Under this HR team, which could have different people having access to it, I have created a PTO channel. And here in the summary, it has told me that 5 people have submitted forms, and it's showing me the last people who submitted. And by every field type that's on that form, it is summarizing the data. Well, one built-in way to look at the actual details of the data on a line-by-line basis, but there's also a tricky way where you can get this information into lists. To see the actual details, one way is I can go into the forms application, into my sick and vacation form maintenance. And in this particular view, it's showing me both the form that the users fill out, and it will also show me the responses. And I can open these responses in Excel to get all the, the rows and the grids of everything that's been filled out. But what I want to show you right here is that within the form itself, for every question, I can say what the question is. I can add options. I can add an other option if I want, specify multiple answers. I can add graphics to this if there was an image or a video or something I wanted to do. I can add new questions, multiple choice, text, ratings questions, dates questions, all kinds of different set questions. Forms can be multiple pages. I can divide those into sections. So there's a lot of flexibility. And if I want to, I can grab any field and just move it and drag it around and change the order of one of these anytime I want. So this is, if you've ever used Google Forms, the capabilities are very, very similar to Google Forms. So I'll just say Microsoft probably went off of that. And if I want a different theme, then I can change the background of this thing. No problem, right? Those are just different kinds of form options that are available to choose or just full color backgrounds or other images. So that's done through the Forms app. So in terms of looking at the actual data, so yes, I could in my responses simply open this in Excel, and it will pop open Excel and list all of them in a spreadsheet, and I'm done. What I think a trickier thing to do is, I'm going back to PTO, is I've created a list called PTO approvals. We talked about lists before, and the data in this list is populated directly from the form. To make that happen, we're using an app that's included in 365 called Power Automate. Power Automate, I've created a very simple, I think it took me 5 minutes. It's a no-code app where I said, when somebody adds something to the PTO form, create a new item in my list, and I mapped the fields because there are fields in this list that don't exist on the form. So for example, there's a status field that I've added here. So this one, let me just go here. Yeah, that one's going to be denied. Sorry, Pat. And I've also added a approver field. So Pat Nims has decided that Pat Nims does not go on vacation. And here again, in my edit and grid view, I can copy and paste. Henry, yes, good for you. Good for you. And I can even say that the approver was me all the way through. So that copy and paste in grid view is really, really super helpful. Just for reference, within Forms, it is possible to, again, you can even get a QR code under the Forms app that you can embed in your website. These can be put directly in your website. And there is functionality in Forms, just going back here to the form itself. It is possible to add branching questions. So if someone said paternity leave, work from home, I could add a branching question that says expected work hours or any change to your availability or schedule. So you can have questions spawn other questions in the form based on the responses. That's just built in within Forms as an application. And that's sort of the basics of the form. Of the applications that we're looking at here today, it is the simplest, but it is really super powerful, especially when you link it to something like lists. Any questions or feedback on forms? Now we're going to move on to Planner, and Planner is the one, so I'm a planning nut, and so it's the one that excites me the most. Planner is a simple project and task manager. You create plans and assign them to people, yourself or other folks. You can chat about those tasks. You can organize them in lists or in buckets or on schedules. You can chart how the team is doing. It will tell you how you're doing on this particular plan. And then as you're designating them, they get descriptions, due dates, priorities, tags, checklists. People get notified if they've been assigned via email. When they're within your organization, they get an email if they have late tasks that are outstanding. And I will absolutely say this is not a replacement for Microsoft Project. Microsoft very deliberately uses the word planner versus project for this particular product. Microsoft Project still exists. If you have a multi-phase, multi-level project over months and years with Gantt charts and work efforts and anything that's complex, you probably want to be in Project. Project exists within the 365 subscription. You do pay extra for it. Planner you get for free and probably handles about 80% of what Office need or businesses need in terms of organizing plans. Short objective, but with enough tasks that they need to be grouped and organized. So they do use it for small project management, business development. You're doing an office move, you're launching a new product, you're sort of a marketing blueprint. You're deciding on improvements to your website and organizing those. And your employee onboarding can easily be done through Planner and tasks. Now, I apologize. So this particular product, like sometimes things go through iterations before they really settle on a name. So Microsoft has a thing called to-dos. They have a thing called Planner. Planner sometimes is referred to as Planner and Tasks. So those names are right now are a little bit interchangeable. We are going to jump into a Planner demonstration. And I am going to go back to here and I'm going to look at I do want to show you just real quickly one. I'm going to go back to forms for a little bit, and I apologize. Just as a sample form, this is a well-being, a sample form for remote working. Check in on your staff, see how they're doing. I did want to point out that forms does have the ability to do grid, multiple choice kind of thing. So this is one question with multiple options where I can choose different boxes for different sections and different responses. I did want to say that. Okay, so I'm going to leave that form and I'm going to go. So now we're talking at Planner and Tasks. And this sample is for a webinar, happens to be this webinar. So this is the default view for Planner and Tasks, where the assumption is that these are phases. These could be phases of a plan, which is all related to a webinar, or these could be each their own plan of themselves. This could be first quarter planning, second quarter planning, or product one rollout, product two rollout. You organize and add as many new buckets as you want. When you are adding a task, you give it a name. You don't have to, but you generally speaking, give it a due date. And you have the option on this screen right here to assign it to somebody. And I'm going to give that to Henry Kim. And then I click Add Task. And if that's enough information, I'm done. Oh, by the way, I can add multiple people to that task if I want to. I can say that I'm also involved in that task as a contact. Now, for more details, I click on that task, and now I can add other things. So label is simply you can call these things anything you want, but these are an additional way of adding, maybe one is infrastructure and another thing is marketing and another thing is whatever. So you can add labels to tasks. I can specify progress. I can say whether or not it's important. I can give things start dates in addition to end dates. I can make things repeating. I can add as many notes as I want. I can add checklists. So in terms of established contact, I want to know the catering, sales. I want to know the on-site manager. And I want to know the IT vendor. I want to make sure that we have those things done for our event. And these individual tasks can show up on these cards, and I can mark them. Oh, I know who the IT vendor is. That's this company that we work with sometimes. So this is the basics of tasks. Now, I can sort and filter these items for what's due today, what's happening tomorrow, what's happening this week. I can filter by keyword if I want to. These right now are grouped by bucket, but I can group them by who are they given to. I can group them by their progress, everything that's completed is in the last column. I can group them by due date, label, and or priority. I also have the ability, there are 4 views within tasks. So I said the default was board, but I can also see a list. Let's just see a list of everything that is open, right? We've looked at the board list already. The chart view will show me, again, this is information about our status. So there are 6 tasks left. 7 have already been completed. Of the 6, 3 haven't started, 1's in progress, and 2 are late. By bucket, marketing only has 1 task left, whereas webinar planning has 2. I can see it by priority. I can see who's been given the majority of the work. So Henry has been given more tasks on this particular project than other people. This again can be grouped different ways in terms of seeing the details of the tasks. And I can always just, again, see a schedule. And I find this to be wonderful. And this can be filtered as well. I just want to see what's happening this week with this task. So those are the only things that are due and necessary there. I'm going to change out my earbud because I'm almost out of power here. So that is very flexible with regard or what tasks can do, and it's some of its flexibility. Tasks is one of the applications that can be added to the sidebar of Teams. So it's always available to you. And so when I click there, it will take me straight to the Tasks by Planner and To Do app. I have the option of popping out this app into its own window. And I think I failed probably to show this on some of the other things. Forms, every application, again, that we've already looked at, every app can be popped out into its own window. So I can go back into Teams and then do something else. So within the, let me go back into Teams there. That's where I want to be. Okay. So when I do look at Tasks by Planner, when I look at it in the app, this is showing me every planner that I have things assigned. So I have some things assigned under content development, under the webinar planner. I also have some things assigned to me under HR tasks in terms of updating an employee handbook and hiring some people. I can also see here under the assigned to me, every task, regardless of what group or what team it comes from, that has been assigned to me. So my tasks, there is a little personal task list that you can throw in here. You can use this as a little to-do list for yourself. Everything that you put under here, tasks, is for yourself. Things that have been flagged as important, again, things that have a status. Planned means that there's a date assigned to it. And again, everything that's assigned to me. Or again, I can just go straight to see everything that is myself and everybody in this particular team. And I still have the same options of seeing it as a board or a chart or a schedule. If you're in Teams and you pop this out into it or view the planner in SharePoint, I can go to the website for this app. And then again, this is the SharePoint Planner backend. And from here, I can export this to Excel. All these items also have the ability to have conversations with your team members. I can add comments. And send that, and other people that are on this task are notified, and then they can reply to that as well. All right, so I think about as much as planner and tasks that I intended to go through. I hope you got a sense of what it can do. Question at this point, we'll open the floor to questions, feedback that anybody might have regards to these 3 applications. If you should have any questions, you can email me, pnims@nimsassociates.com, or so Dakota is does web developer and maintenance. And he also has worked a lot with these 365 apps as well and knows a lot about how to extend them. So Nims at nimsassociates.com will get you in touch with Dakota. But otherwise, I thank you for your time. And again, to me, the most exciting thing about the apps in Microsoft 365 is, one, they just keep getting better. They have developed a lot over the years and that they've existed, and they keep adding functionality to them, which I think is wonderful. And the other two things are, it's free. You don't have to buy an additional subscription to get them, probably there within your 365 current subscription. And they also then, whatever you do with them, it's automatically integrated with your team and the teamwork that you might have already created within Microsoft Teams. All right. Well, again, if anybody has any questions, don't hesitate to shout out. But otherwise, we'll go ahead and call this session closed.